So we are back in the building.
Yes, we are. We are back in the building. What is up, family?
What's good?
What it
What's up?
do?
I'm in the mass media group in the house Sunday. What is today's date? The
The sixth.
6th of March, and we are marching on.
Marching on. Back here for part 2 of the eligibility discussion. I mean, it seems to me we've said all we've said need to say on the subject, but for those in the back, here we are again to make it clear.
Yeah. Making it clear. What's up, family? Thanks for everybody for joining. We're gonna get into it today, do what we need to do, and make it happen, family. Make it happen. Should we start off with the elder
Yeah, a
speaking?
few words of wisdom.
And people, of course, as I tell you, this world has to always be backwards, you see. The ones who need to be reduced most drastically have the world thinking the other way around. Because a good deal of the problem sometimes is not the number of people in the world, but the number of greedy people in the world. Where you have a so-called minority of people who consume the vast majority of the world's resources. This large population that they talk about could eat better if these people weren't eating everything up. And so, to a good extent, sometimes to have more for everybody to eat, you have to get rid of the greedy ones. The ones who are over-consuming, who are taking the food out of other people's mouths, you see. But here you have the people who rob you and take everything you got and then say, you don't have enough to support yourself. You know, this is the kind of joke that we got going at here in the name of some kind of higher principles. So slavery is not supposed, the experience of slavery is not supposed to be operating in the mentality of black folk. And you hear a lot of our youngsters will say that as well. How do you talk about slavery? That was back there. Or whites talk about that. Well, that was back there. We don't have anything to do with that anymore. You see. And it's an amazing situation because you have to remind them that you're still living off the interest of the wealth that your forefathers earned from slavery. You're still enjoying the accumulated wealth that began with the enslavement of our people. And if you're going to enjoy the wealth that was generated by evil, then you must take the curse that comes along with it. And therefore, even though you personally had nothing to do with it, but because you have received stolen goods, you must pay the price as well.
Like, share, subscribe, family. Like, share, subscribe.
That was fire.
Yeah, family. If
Spitting the
people aren't
truth.
Yep. People aren't familiar with Dr. Amos Wilson. Look him up. That's all I have to say. You will be enlightened.
Yeah, well, it was pretty clear that he was talking about the greed of the dominant society. But is the diaspora being greedy, trying to get in on our reparations claim since we're here to talk about eligibility today? Is this greed driven?
I don't know if it's greed driven, and I don't know. I think we have I think a couple of different ways to think about it, right? Because I don't think primarily there's like a big diaspora thing, right? Like trying to eat something that's ours, particularly in this California case, specifically because the people, for example, on the California Reparations Commission that are arguing, and we're going to talk more about this, right? That are arguing for some sort of bigger all Black people reparations thing are some of them are people. Right, so like some of them are who those of us who you might consider descendants. So it's a little bit more complicated than that. So but we're gonna talk about that, I'm sure.
Yeah, I'd say there are people on all parts of the spectrums, right? There are individuals who are trying to get in, trying to get that cake, and there are individuals who are like, nah, that specifically and only belongs to the descendants of American chattel slavery. So there isn't. I don't think there's one mindset that is held by the entire body of individuals. Um, excuse me.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't know. CO, did you have some more to say or?
Nah, I'll just cut it short and drink some water.
Okay. Get your libation. Get your water on. Yeah, it's interesting. This upcoming eligibility meeting that's going to be on the California task force. We're going to see what's going on with it and see how they vote. I think we're all very interested on what's going to happen next. So I don't know. Should we get into some of the upcoming videos? And so, before we do that, let's actually give a shout out to our brother here. Let's go to the slide with Chris and Ebony.
Oh man.
Yeah, here, I'll pull it up for us.
Oh wow.
Yeah, let's give a shout out to you, bro, before we actually
Oh,
jump
I don't
into
deserve it. I don't deserve it.
Oh, brother, you definitely deserve it, man.
Definitely deserve it.
We appreciate
Oh,
your humble attitude, brother, but you've been putting in work, and hopefully we can just support you and support others like you and people in the chat and so forth for you're doing your due diligence, brother. So I would have you read your own article, but
no way.
I'll read it for you, and then if you can just give us a little summary on the interview and how that came about. So Chris Lodgson, the lead organizer with the Coalition for a Just and Equitable California, hosts that direct cash payments will be a part of a more comprehensive package. Quote, the path forward is going to have to, in addition to that, create specific types of reparations that target helping our people here in California become not just more powerful consumers, but also help us to become better producers, Lodgson said. So that must go hand in hand with the direct cash payments, and that means endowing us with business grants, endowing us with industrial grants. All right, brother, how did that interview come about?
Yeah, it's funny because that wasn't actually an interview. I think they actually took from another story and then posted it and printed it there. I think that comes from either the story in the USA Today or Yahoo News. So if you remember back, there was a story in USA Today that I did do an interview for, which was a few weeks ago. It was like early February, I believe. And then I think Ebony took some of that story and reprinted it in there. And definitely big shout out to Ebony. Definitely big shout out to the folks at the USA Today and at Yahoo too. But that's where that came from. And the point that I was making there was that this is about the cash payments piece, right? Because we all know cash payments, direct cash payments, compensation, direct monetary economic compensation must be a part of reparations. If you ask me, it ain't reparations if it don't have compensation, or if it don't have compensation, it ain't reparations. And the other piece that I wanted to add there was that we also want to make sure that we not just becoming better consumers, but that we actually be becoming producers, so that we are actually also producing the goods and using reparations to produce the goods that we ultimately consume too. We want the whole thing. We want the whole economy. We want the whole thing. We don't just want one piece of the direct compensation. We want the whole piece of the direct compensation, and that is the producer part, and that's also the consumer part. By the way, thanks to everybody in the chat. I see the love. I don't deserve that. It's every single one of y'all. And by the way, they also said that I am the lead organizer, and I always try to make this clear, and I always tell the people that I'm working with, I am one of the lead organizers. I'm one of many lead organizers, one of many amazing people who are doing amazing work, just like each and every single one of y'all here, and there, or something like that. They're here with me, and everybody that's in the chat too. So big love, big respect. And yeah, but that's how that came about. And yeah, there'll be more of this. There'll be more stories like this. And as we get to the part of the Reparations Commission work where we turn to what forms reparations should look like, we'll come back to this question. Remember that the first year of the California Reparations Commission's work is about studying, collecting the evidence, gathering the data, sharing the stories, collecting the stories, putting the case for reparations together. And then they're going to put together a report that's going to be due out, a first part of a report that's going to be due out in June of this year. And I think a draft is almost ready too of that report. It's going to be a big, long report. So we're going to have our work cut out for us, breaking that down and making sure people understand that. But then after that part, after June, what's going to happen is we're going to turn our attention to the forms of reparations. So we spent a whole year studying and gathering the data. Now let's get to the reparations proposals part. Let's get to the remedies part. Let's get to actually what do reparations look like. So we're going to come back to this talk about what forms they take. Compensation must be there. Direct compensation, cash must be there, and we're gonna speak specifically about what that looks like. And also, like I said, I want the whole piece. I want the whole piece of that compensation. So I want the direct financial compensation that's going to help us buy the things we want to buy and build the wealth we want to build. But I also want the stuff that's gonna be able to help us be producers also, right? Not just consumers, but producers of the goods that we buy, and also the things that help facilitate that production and consumption too, right? So like banks, right? Like I want to see us being able to produce our own banks. I want us to be able. I want to see us be able to produce our own financial institutions with that direct compensation too. So that way we are able to use that capital and use that compensation in a way that actually grows our wealth. So that was part of what I was saying there.
Yo, hey Chad, brother, I see you in the chat, man.
What's up, bro?
Chad Boogie, yeah, brother. If you have a chance, man, we love you. For you to join the conversation, if you can, we'll be here till around 12ish. So yeah, brother, if you can. If not, it's all good, family. Appreciate you joining. Anyway.
All right. Well, we can have Chad join us virtually here. Let's take a look at what he had to say at the last testimony, the task force testimony.
All across America, committed to completing Dr. King's mission of economic justice. We came together offline, we organized, and we went to work. Next slide, please. As we spread the lineage reparations message in our communities, the contemporary movement grew from hundreds to thousands to tens of thousands and soon to be millions. Next slide, please. Grassroots Black Americans across the country took action and began to self-advocate our collective interests, centering reparations and lineage-specific policy. Next slide, please. We sought out our representatives, both locally and nationally, and demanded their support for reparations in exchange for our political and voting capital. Next slide, please. When the COVID-19 pandemic shut down the country in 2020, contemporary reparationists continue to advocate virtually, utilizing technology to communicate and to organize. The pandemic has been a test of the strength and resilience of the contemporary reparations movement, but the grassroots have proven sturdy.
Sturdy. Stay steady. First of all, big shout out to Chad. That was fire. That was super, super fire. Great testimony, bro. Big shout out, big love. Amazing testimony. Dropped the mic, set the whole world on fire with that testimony. I think you energized us crazy with that testimony. CO, I want to highlight you though on this too, because one of those pictures, CO, is actually the first time I met you in person. I don't know if you remember that.
I do. You're hard to forget, Chris. I remember. Fire. We've been at this for a minute, Chris. I know you deserve everything that everyone is saying.
Oh, man.
You go hard. So you gotta learn how to accept your flowers, my brother.
I do.
But folks been doing the work for a minute, as Chad laid out in that testimony he gave before the committee. Folks have been putting in work for years, and it's great to see it coming to fruition. And I will certainly say, to what you were talking about before, I completely agree. Like, it's not just about the cash checks. That has to be a part of it, absolutely. But we do need to be able to be finally be in a position where we can own the means of production, right? We have to finally be in a position of like, no, it's not just about buying that pair of jeans, having the money to buy something, but it's also about, is it a black owned company that's making those jeans? Is it a black owned company that is doing the marketing to sell those jeans? Chad coming through is good.
Yo,
You
What's
know,
going
is
on, family? Sorry, CEO. Keep
no,
going.
you
Keep
good,
going.
you good. Is it a black owned company that everyone is putting their money in the banks, just like Chris just brought out? Like, it's about the whole ecosphere of being prosperous. It's not just about, can I buy a product and that's it. So I'm here for it, and I can't wait till we get to the point of making proposals.
super
What's up,
fat.
Chad? Thanks for joining, bruh.
What's going on, fam?
What
Moya,
up?
Kim, Chris, CO. Good to see y'all, man. Happy Sunday.
Happy Sunday, man. Good morning, bro.
Yeah, good morning. You know, I'm just getting moving on my Sunday. You know what I'm saying?
Same here. Same here.
Appreciate you, brother, for coming. So yeah, man, do you want to, I'm sure most people on here know who you are, but do you want to, for the people that don't know who you are, you want to give us a little information about yourself, and can you kind of give us a summary of your testimony, that clip that we play, if you don't mind,
Yeah,
brother?
man. You know, I'm everyday black folks, right? I'm just a brother, born in Texas, raised in Mississippi, between Mississippi and Chicago a little bit. Living in LA now. I think I first met you, Chris, back in 2019 down here in LA at a town hall. The brother came through, represented like he does, put in work like he does. And I'm just somebody who loves us, man, who believes in the greatness in our people, and I can't. Nobody's ever going to tell me differently on that, right? So I came into this movement, fired up, and so what y'all see me doing comes from the heart, comes from love, and just comes, all of y'all. I feel like, we're all in this collectively, right? And so we are all doing this work out of love for each other. It's the most beautiful thing I've ever been a part of, man, and it just warms my heart every day. So that's kind of where I come from, just, my feelings on it. As far as the testimony, that was a wild, that was a wild day, first of all. I mean, on that day, for those who watched the entirety of that meeting, it was very much slanted in one direction, right? It was very much going one way. And kind of we kind of saw that coming when we saw the agenda, right? So I was very much like a last minute addition to that agenda, not something I had planned to do, not something that was in the works for a long time. I think I had maybe 2 days to kind of come up with testimony and get my presentation together and get it tight, because the DOJ was like, you got to have this in, before we put you up. So, did my best to, like, communicate to people who haven't been here, like, the four of you have since the very beginning, so people could understand kind of where's all this coming from, right? Like, where did this movement, where did it find its genesis, and how did it reach this kind of crescendo that we're in right now, where we have everyone around the world talking about reparations at this point. And so for me, that always comes back to the people. That always comes back to the grassroots. It always comes back to you guys, and all the other organizers and activists around this country that I've just been so blessed to have contact with and to come in contact with in the course of the last, wow, like 3-4 years now, y'all, right? But just a blessing in my life, right? Like, just to see how y'all have come together, how y'all have worked, how y'all have coalesced, and continue to do so and continue to win, right? Like, it's not just like we're coming together and talking about things. Y'all are putting things into motion. You're putting action into motion, and that is producing results and outcomes that everybody else can see, right? So I'm proud to be associated with y'all, to be honest, right? Like, when I wake up every day, and my group here in LA will tell you, like, I wake up and I'm like, I love y'all. Like, that's the first thing I'll say to folks. Like, I love y'all, because before this, we were all kind of in our own separate spaces. I think we all had this feeling, we all felt this way, right? But we didn't have the community to be able to communicate with each other, right? We didn't have the community to be able to activate and put into motion the actions that are creating these outcomes together, right? So now we have that. So I'm just so thankful for y'all, man. So, you know, it's the least I can do to be here to just say, like, thank you for what ETM is doing. And for folks that are watching for the first time, this is the only media outlet that has been streaming all the AB 3121 meetings from the very beginning. This is it. So when folks come around now and you see, like, you know, USA Today or, you know, Ebony or, you know, other major outlets talking about AB 3121, these people you see here, you know, here, they was on it from the very beginning, from the jump. Like I said in the testimony, before there was an AB 3121 bill, we were advocating and organizing around a resolution that was at the state level. So, you know, recognize that, and I appreciate y'all. You know, so thank you for everything y'all do. I hope I answered the question. I know I'm just rambling now, so I'm gonna shut up.
Nah, definitely, brother. And before we go on to the next video, let's give a shout out to some chat people, shall we? What's up, Ronnie Lynn? What's up, Reps? Now this is funny because I can kind of see your avatar a little bit, Reps. I don't know, but you kind of look like my daughter, which was like, that's interesting. So I thought my daughter be up in the chat all the time. I'm like, what? Anyway, I'm just kind of showing my age, but yeah, it's all good. Peace out to Reps, Michael Richards, Darlene. What's up, Darlene? We got Crystal in the building. We got who else?
Yeah, Shannon there. Shannon was in there. What's up, Shannon?
Shannon.
What's good, Shanna? Yeah, that's a
Shannon,
soldier,
what's going
Shanna.
on,
Yeah.
sis? Who else? We got Eric Christian. What's up, family? Yeah, so thanks everybody for coming. We appreciate everybody. All right, so let's start getting into this a little bit more. Shall we play who else? I think should we play Marcus? Let's play.
Yeah, speaking of amazing organizers, let's see what Marcus Champion had to say.
That's the
Our next speaker is Marcus Champion. You've been unmuted. You now have 3 minutes.
Good morning, Task Force. My name is Marcus Champion. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, you're good.
Yeah, my name is Marcus Champion. I'm a California native, born and raised in Inglewood, currently living in South Central. I want to talk about who is eligible. There's a reason why Secretary of State Dr. Shirley Weber allowed our organization, now known as CJEC, the Coalition for a Just and Equitable California, to make amendments to the eligible party. Originally, it was just African American, but she accepted our language that changed it to African Americans or descendants of persons enslaved in the United States, because it's a lineage standard, not a race standard. And I want to also address my fellow Black brothers and sisters who spoke before me, that we have to think about what's legal and not our feelings. As Dean Chemerinsky has stated before on our show, Politics in Black, if we make this about race and not lineage, violate Prop 209 in California. Greaterly federally, you violate equal protection. So that means that reparations is thrown out. Reparations is null and void if you make this about all Black people and not make it specific to the actual aggrieved party within the state and then also within the United States of America. So that is my comment for today. Thank you. Keep up the good work.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Champion.
absolute fire.
Straight fire, fam. So let's talk about Marcus did mention Prop 209. In section 31A, it says the state shall not discriminate against or grant preferential treatment to an individual or group on the basis of race, sex, color, ethnicity, or national origin in the operation of public employment, public education, or public contracting. So I don't know, Chad or Chris, if you two want to take on this, or Kim or CO, if you guys kind of want to elaborate on Prop 209 and how it's problematic in this eligibility question.
Yeah, go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, I'll take a stab at it, and then definitely want to hear what you got to say, Chad and CO for sure, and Kim and you more as well. So Prop 209 was a California proposition that went into place back in 1996, and what it did was it added that section 31A to the California Constitution. And this was back in 1996, and what it said was just what you read, that California cannot do anything specifically for any one group or race of people, specifically in public education, public employment, and public contracting. So California can't spend any money specifically to benefit one racial group of people in public public education, public employment, public contracting. So obviously, if we're trying to make reparations like we are, and we are obviously going to want the state to spend money on public education, public employment, public contracting, and other things too, we have to think about how the California Constitution will be in the way of that kind of thing. So what Marcus said was right in his testimony, that when Professor Dean Erwin Chemerinsky at UC Berkeley, top constitutional scholar in the country, I say he's the person who we're going to call to help us if and when this thing goes to the courts. Specifically said, Professor Chemerinsky specifically said, if you want your reparations to survive any court challenge, it must be specifically based on lineage, not race, meaning you can't use race at all. You can't use any all Black lives type of thing in your reparations eligibility, because that's going to get it thrown out by the California courts. Add to that, it's also going to get thrown out by the federal courts, even if you do somehow survive a California constitutional court challenge. Like, let's say you want to say, all right, so in order to get around the state constitution, we're not going to do anything in public employment, public education, and public contracting. First of all, that's a really bad idea. That's billions of dollars you would leave on the table. You're going to tell me that we're not going to do anything for our kids. We're going to not do anything for our Black-owned businesses, which we just talked about, and we ain't going to give Black people jobs just so we can try to get around Prop 209? Absolutely not. But let's say you even did something like that, which would be a really bad idea. Well, you still run into the 14th Amendment, which says almost the same thing. So you don't survive, and you start with less. I make the argument that we won't even get to any courts because no legislator is going to want to introduce any type of legislation that they know is going to get thrown out by the courts, and no governor is going to sign it. So we won't even get to any reparations proposals if we make a race-based reparations eligibility. So that's the point that Marcus was making. That's the absolute right point to make, and I'll throw it to Chad and CO and others.
Yeah, I think you covered it, Chris. I mean, from our perspective, we reached out to Dean Chemerinsky late last year. I want to say it was like October, November timeframe, and we had a conversation with him, right? Because Dean Chemerinsky, for those that don't know, he's argued in front of the Supreme Court, I want to say half a dozen times, right? Probably more than most people walking around today. And so when we reached out to him, we really were trying to bring in the expert, right? And talk to the person who had the most experience and the most knowledge about constitutional law. I mean, he teaches this at UC Berkeley. So, our conversations with him led into the conclusions that you heard, Chris just lay out, that we can't do anything based on race. And, to his point, we're talking billions and billions of dollars when we talk about education, contracting, and employment. Like, those are core industries. And so there was a suggestion made out of the task force in that last meeting that we should just ignore those areas, which was enraging to me. That was absolutely, I'm like, how can you even think to leave that out of our repair when that is core and central to our repair, right? So for me, Dean Erwin Chemerinsky, we need to listen to experts. And I tried to convey that in the testimony as well, not only here with AB 3121, but when we're talking about HR 40, because I think we all realize that these things are interconnected. And so we have to understand that race is always going to be an obstacle, whether we're talking locally or whether we're talking at the federal level. And we have to move forward on lineage. There is no other pathway to get us to the end goal, right? And when we're talking about lineage, we have to have the understanding that that is what we not only base California repair on, but we then have to reach out to the federal government, and we have to have that as the basis across the board. So that's why I'm excited for March, is because I think that vote, winning that vote in March and making sure that California moves forward on lineage, just as Dean Erwin Chemerinsky advises us to do, I think that is going to be the pivotal point in this movement, where now we no longer are having this conversation, and it's established, at least in the fifth largest economy in the world. California is saying it's got to be lineage-based reparations. So now federal government, it's got to be lineage-based reparations. So for me, Dean Erwin Chemerinsky, that's why we had him on Politics and Black. That's why, I referenced him in the testimony. Chris, was part of that conversation with him. I think it was Tiffany who brought him to the table, as she brings everyone to the table that we talk to practically, right? So he's just a central figure, and I appreciate him because obviously he doesn't have to stand on this, and it's really just his legal opinion based on decades of constitutional study and work. So again, if anyone's watching from the task force or anybody who's still questioning why we're talking about lineage, it's not only just to make sure that our people are correctly identified as the beneficiary class, but also to make sure that we're legal, right? And that we're within the confines of the Constitution, and that what we do can withstand court challenges. It can withstand those constitutional challenges that we know are going to come because they're going to challenge anything that we do. So I'll stop there.
Nah, the two of y'all covered it all. Like, not much to say after that. It's what we're seeking after. We're hungry for it, and it's not just, oh, we're just going after it because we're going after it. There's a lot of thought. There's a lot of professionalism that is put into making sure that this happens. And Marcus just spoke about it, and Chris and Chad just laid it out for you. Y'all drop the mic. Nothing else to say on it.
Well, I got one more thing to say too. So let me. I got two more things to say quickly. One is, I'll see if I can do this in a minute or in a half. So one thing is that, by the way, great comments in the chat. Keep your comments in the chat coming. Fire comments, fire suggestions, fire ideas. Keep them coming. Let us know what you think about some of the questions and some of the things that we're talking about too. But so let me say this thing. One, what I think we're also going to hear in the March vote, the March meeting. By the way, we didn't say this specifically, explicitly yet, but the March meeting date has been publicly announced. It's March 29th. That whole first day, March 29th, is about eligibility. So March 29th is the actual specific day that is now public. So mark that on your calendars. Public comment's going to start at 8:30 a.m. Pacific time and go for an hour and a half. So from 8:30 to 10 a.m. the public comment, and the meeting starts at 8:30 and it's going to go generally to about 5 p.m. But so we're also going to hear, I think, something and that's related to this, which is, okay, let's instead of race, let's use a harm standard. So let's use something called harm, right? So, okay, if we don't use race, let's use something called harm. But here's the problem with that. If you don't do lineage and then you just do harm, then what you do is you open it up for anybody of any race who can say they was harmed. So now it's no longer reparations anymore. Because if I'm somebody who's like a Native American, or if I'm somebody who's maybe Japanese who got redlined, I tell people this all the time. I live in a neighborhood right now. I'm sitting in a neighborhood right now where Japanese people were redlined out of this neighborhood here in California. That's harm. They were harmed. So if we don't use race and we don't use lineage and we do something called harm, or we do some mix, which I think people are talking about as like a tier thing. So let's have some tier thing where we have lineage plus harm as a tier thing. Absolutely not, because if you do harm, then what you do is you open it up to everybody of any race, and it's not reparations anymore. Last thing I'll say is something that occurred to me the other day. I was thinking about this. This is a huge opportunity. In 2020, if y'all remember, we tried to overturn Prop 209 with a proposition called Prop 16. First of all, Lisa Holder, who was on the task force, who is a proponent of this all Black, all lives matter reparations, was co-chair of the Prop 16 campaign. That failed. It failed. So she and her co-chair and her campaign failed. But let me say this. If we are able to design a policy, we might not even need to overturn Prop 209. If we're able to design a policy that's lineage based and set it in motion with these reparations, we might not even need to take down Prop 209. Because why do we need to get rid of Prop 209 if we can do lineage policy? We can just do lineage policy for us. So that's another huge opportunity here. And that's something that I think we want to make a point of going forward.
Yeah, I think Chris just made a great point, and I'll get a little like philosophical here. The movement for reparations for me has always been about breaking race. It's always been about getting us out of this black and white construct that was created to keep us bottom casted in this country. And so I feel like this is the path that we've been set on, by it's divine intervention, right? And what we're doing now is literally what Chris is talking about is breaking race and saying that race is not something that that's not the lens you should use to view us. It should be that lens of lineage, because that accurately portrays not only who we are, what we contribute, and what has been done to us, and then what we are owed. And so for me, it's always been about getting away from race. Lineage is the key, and making sure that we're always beating that drum. And, we're hearing that just from Chemerinsky. I'll also talk, I think you're going to play a clip from him, but I'll talk about John Tatiishi as well, who's another proponent of, getting outside of race. When he read HR 40, I had a conversation with him. He said, hey, this isn't specific. And this is the man who was the lead, I'll call him lead because he wrote the book Redress, right? But one of the principal organizers of the Japanese American Redress campaign. And he understands what it takes to get federal legislation for reparations, right? He was successful with it, right? Again, we got to listen to people that know what they're talking about. And so he read HR 40. He made the comment to me. He's like, this isn't specific. I don't know who this goes to. Who are we talking about? Descendants of Africans, right? That could literally mean almost anybody, as Africa is the cradle of humanity, right? So we have to be specific. Specificity is our weapon in this fight. And lineage is that lens that gets us to the specificity that's required to get the legislation passed. And so anybody that's standing in the way of that is actually in opposition to reparations, if you ask me. So, I'll stop there.
All right, let's roll a quick clip from Chairman Minsky. Yeah.
Have taken the position, and with 3 additional conservative justices, Gorsuch, Kavanaugh, and Barrett, hard to imagine the Supreme Court doing anything but reversing those earlier decisions. Well, what does that mean in the context of the discussion of reparations? If reparations are framed in a race-based manner, then they would have to meet strict scrutiny, necessary to achieve a compelling purpose. And remember, the Supreme Court has said remedying a history of discrimination is not regarded by the court as a compelling government purpose. And so I think it would be very hard to convince this Supreme Court or lower courts following Supreme Court precedent that a race-based reparation program would be constitutional. I think the best hope with regard to the Supreme Court is a program that is facially race neutral, that being framed in terms of a benefit for descendants of slaves would be much more likely to be upheld. There are precedents for reparations, as this commission well knows. For example, there was the reparations provided to those who had been in Japanese internment camps. But it's important to note that that was based on people who had suffered a particular injury, and they were each given $20,000 in an apology during the Reagan administration. It wasn't anyone who was of a particular race. I think it would be hard to convince this court that a race-based program, net strict scrutiny, was constitutional. On the other hand, what's more encouraging to me that I cannot think of any instance where the Supreme Court has struck down a race-neutral law on the ground that it has a benefit or even a targeted benefit for minorities. As an example, some states have adopted admissions programs where they take top 10% of classes across the state. And this was undoubtedly adopted to benefit minorities, and it had the effect of benefiting minorities. And yet the Supreme Court, at least called dicta, has indicated that would be constitutional, even though the purpose, the effect would be to benefit minorities. So I come to you as the messenger. I am not defending the law as set out by the Supreme Court. It is certainly not the law as I would want it to be. And I completely understand the benefits with regard to praising reparations and framing it in terms of those who are Black. I am simply addressing the question, what is most likely to be held by the courts? Let me just respond to 3 things that might be in mind, and then I'll take your questions. One thing that might be in mind is there is a tremendous difficulty in proving that someone is a descendant of slaves. This will be very under-inclusive in that way. As this commission knows so well, records are incomplete. And so the cost of what I'm suggesting is that many who are deserving would not get benefits. And I think if you go in the direction of providing that those who are descendants of slaves would get reparations, how to deal with the incomplete records and the lack of documentation becomes very important. A second concern is, as articulated by the prior speaker, all Blacks in this country have suffered from the legacy of slavery. All should therefore be able to benefit from reparations. I think that is a compelling argument, but I don't think the United States Supreme Court would find that to be a compelling argument. If you look at the cases I mentioned, where the court says remedying the past history of discrimination is not a compelling interest, I don't see a way of persuading the current Supreme Court, that matter the lower courts of that. And a final criticism of what I'm suggesting is that there's still the purpose of benefiting Blacks. The effect is still to benefit Blacks. Might a court not strike it down on that basis? And yes, I think that's a risk, even of a reparations law that's framed in terms of benefiting descendants of slaves. But I think it is far more likely to be upheld than a law that is framed just in terms of race. So again, wanted to address just one question for you: how to frame reparations in the way most likely to be upheld by the courts. And I'm glad to take any questions.
Clear as day. Clear as day. He laid it out.
Pretty cut and dry there. I don't know what else there is to say, but as far as the harms is concerned, the harms argument, I was in a Twitter Spaces and I heard an interesting concept that the constant reclassification is a harm. The reclassification from freedmen, which we had some protections under. So that is a harm in itself. And then, just the constant reclassification throughout history to here we are now with African American. I mean, how are we ever supposed to get anywhere when we're always starting over, always being renamed, always being reclassified? I mean, could that potentially be the harm in itself?
Yeah, there'll be harms that's definitely I mean, I would agree that that's a harm. And that's a harm unique to us. And there's a lot of other harms that's unique to us too, right? Chattel slavery, very unique to us. Jim Crow, very unique to us. However, we want to be very careful about the harms argument because that's going to be used against the lineage argument. I think we're gonna see that in late March. That harms argument is going to be used against the lineage argument. It's going to be used as a way to say, let's do something that is like a tier thing. Let's do a levels where if you're a descendant and you have the lineage, then you are at this level. But if you're not a descendant and you're you have some harm, then you're at this level. And if you're Black, maybe too, then you have this level, and you're not a descendant. These are going to be used against the lineage specificity claim. And we all just heard from Professor Chemerinsky. Again, this is the guy who we would probably have to call to help us when there is going to be a court challenge. And again, I make the point we won't even get there because no responsible legislator and no responsible governor is going to sign any legislation, or for the legislators introduce any legislation and then fight to get it passed and then work to get it through all the committees and all of the other stuff. Then they're going to be less likely to want to do that if they know, and when they know, that y'all wrote this in a very dangerous, irresponsible way that includes race and harm and maybe has lineage and maybe doesn't. So that's why I think we want to be careful about the harm thing, and we really want to stay away from the harm thing right now and just focus on lineage specificity. Let's get that done first, and then let's talk about how we fine tune it. Right? I think Professor Chemerinsky had a good point in his first point about the records and the documentation part of how do you satisfy the how do you prove that you're a descendant of U.S. slavery? And Kim, you and I had these conversations, and you Moya, we've had these conversations and this is going to be a part of what we're going to have to figure out. But let's solve the lineage problem first, and then let's get to how people satisfy that.
Yeah, no, and Chris, that last point is exactly what I was going to say. We got to make a distinction between constructing something that's legal and then implementation of what we construct, right? And so the genealogy part of it and making sure that folks can show sufficient proof that they are of the descendant community to be able to receive the benefits, that's on us after we get established the lineage-based reparations model, right? It's on our community to go within our community and to provide resources. Hopefully we get some resources from the state as well, but for us to then lead those efforts of helping our community to trace back and to make sure that we are giving them the tools that they need to be able to prove their eligibility for reparations, right? So, while I appreciate the dean's input there, I think that, first of all, I think there's just a general misconception that it's so hard for us to trace our lineage, right? When everybody on this panel right now understands they're descendants of enslaved people in the United States, right? We all know that, implicitly through our families, through our research, through our own genealogical efforts, right? So it's not that difficult. And I think it was Dr. Darity and Kirsten Mullen who I first said it, but it's very true. Most of us are less than 3 or 4 generations removed from somebody who was enslaved, right? So I have to always push back when I hear these arguments about it was so long ago. How are we going to prove it? Where are the records? That's implementation, right? That's not construction of something that's going to be constitutional and something that's going to be legal. So I appreciate Chris making that distinction between the two, because he's absolutely right. We got to make something that's going to be, rock solid, can pass constitutional muster, can pass the legal standards. And then when we do that, we come back and we say, okay, here are the methods, here is the methodology about how you prove or show evidence of your eligibility. So 2 separate things, and we got to do it in order of operations. We got to get fundamentally legal proposals and a basis done first. So I'll stop there.
I mean, you're absolutely right. The records are there. It is going to take some, some commitment in tracking it down. I know the last time we did one of these eligibility broadcasts, I was talking about, I just feel it in my blood, feel it in my bones. My Uncle Monkey with a watermelon farm in Louisiana. I know that's not going to be good enough as far as this claim is concerned. That's why, one of the best ways, and people keep saying it, is call your elders. Call your elders. So after that broadcast, I was like, all right, let me get serious here. I called my older auntie in Louisiana. She's about 80 years old, and she actually gave me a name that I had not heard before, and I was able to search that. So I was able to get back to 1870 just with that name that I didn't know before, but that was talking to my elders. So if you have elder relatives, you should really give them a call, talk to them. And she was really happy. She's like, oh, I'm so glad you're doing this. I'm so, glad you guys are. And she sent me a couple of pictures of my uncles and stuff from back in the day. So it was really a great experience, but it doesn't take that much work, but you do have to put some time and energy into it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One more thing, CO, just can I add? Because I think that's a great point, Kim. And how I think about reparations as well, we're creating institutions and institutional ownership, right? So when we're asking ourselves, our community, these questions, we got to also understand that these are questions that are going to lead into job creation and that are going to lead into ownership within our community. Because from my opinion, if we're going to have genealogical services, that needs to be us. We need to own that. We need to employ ourselves in being the genealogist within our community, right? That's an economic engine, right? So all the things that we are doing, all the questions that we're answering in the course of getting to reparations also lead into our reparations. Like, we got to look at every step as, hey, this is part of the building block. This is part of the reparations, pyramid that we're building to make sure that our people have institutional wealth, institutional ownership, and that we are then not just going out and trying to find jobs in other communities. We're creating our own jobs in our own institutions that are creating and buttressing our own wealth, right? So I'll stop there, CO. Go ahead.
Yeah. That's what we was talking about earlier about only that means of production, right? We should be
Yeah,
able to have for ourselves and be able to do for ourselves, and then like retaining that information generation after generation, so that we can, the folks who come after us can understand where they came from. But I was gonna make a point, sort of a bit earlier, just like Kim just touched on, about doing that work, going to talk to your elders. I've talked to several of my elders. I've started recording them, just sitting down with them, just grabbing those stories and everything. But Darlene in the comments made a really good point. Like, we were their property. There are plenty of records, not only from our side. Our side is mostly like memories and talking to elders, like, hey, who do you remember? What did you see? What did you experience? But from their side, we were literally their property.
facts.
So I have went back to Texas and found records of the people who owned our family, and them counting them, because they had to, like tax information and all that kind of stuff. Like, it actually does exist. But to Chad's point, or everyone's point on who's out here right now, it does take work, right? You do. And if your older generation has passed, then it might be a little bit harder, but it is work and does take some money, which is why I do think that this part of it should be funded.
Yeah,
And part of it should be like empowering our own community to do this work.
yeah.
Definitely. So, do we want to take a listen to what some of the opposition had to say? Here's Dr. Grills, a snippet of what she had to say at the last task force meeting.
Nuanced complications as we look at this lineage thing. We're going to reduce ourselves yet again to one of the master's tools. That want something akin to the one drop rule, where, okay, your mother is a direct descendant and your father is a Caribbean immigrant. So you got the one drop rule through your mother, or, how's that going to work? And then there's this notion about you've got, Black immigrants, whether they came during the early 1900s or they came in 2000, are going to should be excluded, even though AB 3121 says that we should be looking at the harms done from the legacy of enslavement, not just the period of enslavement. And so if that be the case, what is it that these African and Caribbean immigrants are going to take away from the direct descendants? I'm not understanding that.
Oh my goodness. Can I eat some of that up? Can I eat some of that? I'm real hungry right now. Let me eat some of that. So first of all, let me get to that last question she asked. Nobody who don't deserve our reparations should get any dollar of our reparations. I don't care if it's one dime. If you were not a descendant of somebody who built this country, if you did not put the work my ancestors did, I don't care who you are, you should not get one penny of what my ancestors get. So that's what you're taking away. How if I take away 10% of your check, what did I take away from you? If I take away 20% of your check, I took something away from you. I don't deserve what you work for your check. I shouldn't have nothing of what you work for your check and for your money. So you don't get none of mine. So that's the first point. Second of all, she used a point about one drop rule. That's a DNA thing. We ain't even talking about no DNA. We're talking about genealogical research with records, meaning can you trace one ancestor to those of us who were enslaved in this country by this country? That's not one drop rule, masters tools. That's gaslighting language. We don't need that gas. That's gaslighting language. As you can see, the chat was on fire. The people was on fire. That's not what we're talking about. So we're not talking about no one drop DNA stuff. We're talking about, can you demonstrate? Could you demonstrate, and with help, could you demonstrate that you have at least one ancestor who was enslaved in this country by this country? It's about lineage. It ain't about whether or not you have some percentage of DNA as a one drop rule thing. There was some other things that I want to mention too, but I want to stop here because I know some other folks got something to say.
I think you nailed it, Chris. I mean, no one has ever said anything about a one drop rule. That was completely fabricated. No one has ever said anything about that. We have been talking about tracing lineage, right? And so that to me was just a disingenuous kind of pushback to talk about one drop rule and how that's going to be confusing. It was purposefully, throwing some. It was muddying the waters purposely, right? And then to talk about how Black immigrants should get reparations. You can't skip over the slavery and the Jim Crow, majority of the Jim Crow, and then come in and say, okay, I should get the same people that were enslaved and that were Jim Crow get, right? It doesn't make any sense. And again, what is she taking away? I agree 100% with Chris. She's taken away from what's owed to us. And that's number one, from the debt that's owed to us. But number two, she's also taking away our legal standing. And she's taken away our ability to say we have specific identity. So when Dr. Grills talks about using master's tools, the arguments that she was making were master's tools. Because one of the first things they did to us when they enslaved us was strip us of identity, right? You don't have your tribal identity anymore. You don't have your familial identity anymore. You don't have your name identity anymore. That's exactly what she's doing when she's saying, hey, Black folks, y'all all the same and y'all all should get the same, right? She's telling us we don't have identity. That's the master's tools. And so I was very disappointed because I respect Dr. Grills. I respect some of the work that she's done. I expected better out of her. I've developed a sort of a relationship with her where we're talking. So I expected better from her. So I'm hoping that, she has time to sit on this. And I'm hoping that everybody in the chat and anybody that's watching this is tweeting her and letting her know how off base she was with that argument, right? Because what I hear out of her was a very real confusion. I'm not sure whether it was willful or whether it was just unconscious, but a very real confusion about what she was doing with those statements and how it traumatized. She's a mental health professional. She traumatized our community with those statements that she was making as a member of the first ever reparations task force in this country. And she needs to know that. So I'm hoping that the community, is taking up the calls of action that CJEC has put out, and that you're tweeting, not only our elected officials, Assemblymember Joe Sawyer and Senator Bradford and Governor Newsom, but you're also taking up and you're tweeting at Lisa Holder and Dr. Cheryl Grills and Don Tamaki, and you're letting them know that we are specific and we have identity and we are a people that should be recognized and not just thrown in under some category of Black that doesn't mean anything, and that takes away our legal standing, takes away our identity standing, takes away our specificity that we need to get to this goal. So I'm done.
I mean, I think you said it all, summed it up pretty nicely there. And then her comment about the one drop, she also combined that with saying if you have a father from the Caribbean or a mother from America, well, then that's your lineage. You trace your lineage back from your American descendant side of the family. That's not difficult to understand either, in my opinion. So yeah, she's off base, off code, off her rocker if she thinks that we're going for any of this. Now let's see what Lisa Holder had to say on the subject of eligibility.
And in this moment, we have to embrace this concept that Black lives matter, not just a sliver of those Black lives, because Black lives are in danger, especially today. And so I believe that it is our task to not be too specific, but to recognize that this is a collective harm that requires a collective remedy. And this is not just a problem that all Black people face in policing. It's a problem that anyone with Black skin faces it.
That didn't make sense. That didn't make sense. That didn't make sense. First of all, that's all lives matter. All Black lives matter equals all lives matter. Let's just call it what it is. Anytime you put all in front of Black, you mean all lives matter. So that's all lives matter. Second, that didn't make sense. It did not make sense. First of all, she called us a sliver. Who are you talking to? You talking to the people that built this country. We not no sliver or nothing. We not no sliver. That was disrespectful, bro. I felt disrespected in my soul. with my energy. That was disrespectful. Who you talking to? A sliver of what? A sliver? We when we figure this out specifically, we're gonna be 90+% of the quote black people in this country. That's a 90+% of the black people in this country right now came here in the bottom of ships or were bred through the people who came here in the bottom of the ships, meaning the black people who built this country. Those of us who descend from U.S. slavery. We ain't no sliver or nothing. We the overwhelming 90+% majority. So that's the first thing. We're not no sliver of nothing. That was disrespectful. That was hurtful. We don't need no all lives matter. And by the way, what she's arguing for is technically illegal and unconstitutional anyway. We said that in the first half of the broadcast. So this is after we heard the legal scholar come in and say, if you do this in some all lives matter way, it's going to be thrown out by the courts. If you do it with some all black people way, it's going to be thrown out by the courts. She ignored that. She ignored that and said, I still want to do it anyway because of something. Now, so that's illegal anyway. And then to disrespect us and say we a sliver, come on.
Yeah, it seems like she's trying to shoehorn anti-blackness policy into our specific reparations agenda. And to Chris's point that all Black lives will matter, that all lives matter approach doesn't fit. It's illegal. It's not going to be able to go anywhere in the courts, and it's a side point. It's not specifically what we are seeking. It's not specifically what we are addressing. So it has no place here in this conversation.
Yeah, I mean, to call 90% of Black America a sliver is absolutely insane to me. Like, to say something like that and to say it the way she said it, I was with Chris. I was enraged again listening to that. But the other thing that I found amazing about it is that Lisa Holder is an attorney, and for her to sit there and say, "Let's not get too specific," as an attorney, those two things don't go together. So anybody that's ever been, we Black here, we've been in the courts of law, right? So you've all been to court at some point in time, whether it be a traffic ticket or whatever, right? When you walk into court and they call whatever the docket is, it's very specific, right? It says, the state against Chad Brown, right? It doesn't say the state against everybody Black in the courtroom, or everybody that lives on the same block as Chad, or everybody that lives everybody that's over 6 feet that's brown that lives in this 20-mile area, right? And so for an attorney to come in arguing against being specific, if you're a client, you need to maybe find new representation is all I'm gonna say, because that doesn't make sense coming from I come from attorneys, right? I got my mother's an attorney. So it doesn't make sense. And she's all about dotting the I's and crossing the T's and the details and making sure that it's very specific, anything that she's talking about. So to hear an attorney sit up there and to say, let's not get too specific, she's actually arguing against what the fundamental principles of the legal field. And like Chris said, completely ignored, the foremost constitutional authority who came in and told her we can't all Black lives matter this. So I'll stop there because I might say something crazy.
Yeah, that part didn't make sense to me, Chad. I'm like, this is your profession. Like you have studied many, many years. You know this work. And so to ignore the leading constitutional head dude in charge, essentially, like, didn't make sense. Like, there's something missing. So I was like, is it that you're not paying attention? I don't want to say that. Like, I'm speculating at this point. I don't actually know, but like, it seemed like something else is going on. That I was like, is your cognitive dissonance really showing up right now?
Yeah, let me say one thing too. Like, so what's interesting too, and this goes to a point that Dr. Grills made this in her points before, and Ms. Holder made it just now. I want to connect these two. There's a intentional misinterpretation of the language going on. So first, they tried to misinterpret the African Americans who are descendants of persons enslaved in the United States language. They tried that, and then Dr. Weber came last month, the author of the bill, and then said, "Hey, by the way, I meant and I mean those folks who have this lineage. So this must be about lineage." So then they moved on from that, and now they're trying to misinterpret the part of the bill that talks about the long standing now legacy of U.S. slavery and say, okay, that's a reason to include, quote, other black people who have nothing to do with U.S. slavery at all. That's another misinterpretation of the language. It's intentional because if you think back, Monica Montgomery Stepp, who's on the task force, actually checked Dr. Grills and Ms. Holder when they tried to use that, and she said actually, if you read the language, it's talking about the ongoing legacy of slavery and Jim Crow on the descendants, not on everybody who some kind of way has melanin and black skin, and it doesn't matter where you're from. You could be from anywhere in the. There's people with melanation all over the planet. There's people with melanin and dark skin and black skin all over the planet. Most of the planet, I think, is in some way melanated, right? So that's also what you're gonna hear. You're gonna hear, and this is gonna go to, let's make this have race in it, which we know is illegal and outside of the legislative intent and outside of what the people want. And then it's gonna move into, all right, well, let's do something called harm. And then, but that's going to open it up to everybody who was harmed at all. I mean, it's going to be all kind of folks who are not black at all, who are going to say, yeah, I was harmed too. I got some harm too. And so, but this is what you're going to hear at the end of the month. And there's going to be this effort to make this some sort of tier thing. And let's be real. This tier thing means race. It means race or race neutral. We don't want no tiers at all. No tiers, no tiers, no tiers at all.
Chris, you just mentioned the people. It's not what the people want. And if we look at the 5 tenets of reparation, compensation, restitution, rehabilitation, satisfaction, guarantees of non-repetition. I mean, so if the people who this claim is for are not satisfied with opening it up to different groups outside of the lineage, I mean, shouldn't that just be the end of it? We're not satisfied, unsatisfactory.
Yeah, we're gonna be unsatisfied as hell if you make this not reparations anymore. Which, if you open it up to people who aren't descendants, it's not reparations anymore. It's some equity thing. It's now let's fix all the problems and let's do equity for everybody. That's not reparation. That's not what the bill was written for. The person who wrote the bill told you that. That's not what's in the language of the bill. The person who has your best legal advice for you told you that, and the people have been saying that since day one.
And speaking of the person that wrote the bill, Dr. Shirley Weber, when she gave her testimony, she said, you know, this not it. This not for y'all, but I will help you write a separate claim more in line with, you know, what you guys are saying. So, I mean, I think maybe they should take her up on that. That's definitely a separate claim. So where do we go from here, guys? Where do we go from here? Because we're getting a lot of questions about Grills and Holder. And if the lineage vote does prevail, should they even remain on the task force, or could they potentially be hostile about the proposals that will be coming out? I mean, there's been some questions about having them removed.
That's a good question. So, generally speaking, so what I want to do is I want to get through the vote first. That's what I want to do. I want to focus on getting through the vote first. And I believe we're going to be overly successful in getting through the lineage, specificity, eligibility vote first. So that's where I'm going to put my focus, and that's where I want to focus my energy. We can deal with the fallout and the consequences after, but that's where I'm going to focus my energy.
Okay, getting
very political answer there.
Yeah, I'm with Chris. We gotta focus, right? And we got a huge vote coming in March, and we got work to do, right? So there's calls to actions out there. I referenced them earlier. That's where my focus is. I'm not thinking about after the vote. I'm not thinking about anything else leading up to this vote. I'm thinking about how we can get all of our people on those phone lines. I'm probably going to be on there like 6:30 in the morning waiting for the meeting to begin, but everybody needs to be on the phone lines, and the consistent message needs to be, we are demanding, the people who are due reparations are demanding a lineage standard. right? And they need to hear from us. So I'm very much focused on that. But, this is kind of, made sure that we're going to continue to pay attention to those that are making these arguments and that seem to be kind of willfully ignorant of what we are saying, right? So we're definitely going to pay attention to them. But at the end of the day, I'm focused on the vote, and I'm focused on getting lineage as the basis for reparations here in California, and then getting that message to the federal government.
All right, let's talk a little bit about what that vote needs to look like. And we'll do that first by checking out what this last vote, what happened at the last vote.
Okay, so there's a motion on the floor to table the discussion till next month. Is there a second? Hearing no second, the motion.
Well, I think there is a degree of unreadiness here, and I think it's been a lot of great discussion here today. But I too think I don't want to feel like we're rushed into something, because it's been brilliant arguments on all sides, and I just think we can flesh this out a little bit more. And so I don't see the need to necessarily take this action up today. So I will second that motion as well.
Seconded that the discussion or vote on the community of eligibility is postponed to next meeting in March. Is there any discussion on the matter?
There's no discussion, Madam Chair. You just go straight to the vote.
Straight to the vote, parliamentary procedure.
Parliamentarian Johnson, you may cue the roll call vote.
Okay. Chair Moore?
No.
Vice Chair Brown? Member Bradford?
Aye.
Hello? Excuse me.
Member
Brown's a no.
Grills? Brown's a no. Okay, thank you.
What is it? What is the mess? Was the mess? I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. Vice Chair Brown, we're voting on to table the motion until the next meeting.
My vote is no.
Member Grills?
Aye.
Member Holder?
Aye.
Member Jones Sawyer?
Aye.
Member Lewis?
No.
Member Tamaki?
Aye.
Member Montgomery Steph?
No.
Madam Chair, 9 members voted. There were 5 ayes and 4 noes.
Thank you. So there are 5 ayes and 4 noes. So the ayes have it and the motion carries. The discussion and vote on the community of eligibility will be postponed to March.
So sad. So sad. I was heated when I was watching that in real time, and I was literally counting them on my fingers, like, and I will say I was surprised with Tamaki's vote. Holder, at least Grills, like we knew where they were gonna vote and stuff like that. But even the chat, ETM was up there popping up some of the folks that some of the comments that were being made in the chat itself. But if you were on Blue Jean itself, or if you were on ETM's network reading there, everyone was like, why are y'all stalling? What is going on? You have enough information. What is the point of this? And even when the chair asked, hey, what more information are y'all looking? What more do you feel like we need? It was such a non-answer. Oh, we should just hear more from expert. Oh, we should just get some more information. It was like, why are y'all stalling if there's not something specifically that you need? It was just disheartening, and it just felt like all that work, all that time, all that energy, and we're finally here, and now y'all just kick the can down the road.
So I have a quick question. So, and I don't know if we can answer this on this platform, but what happens if they don't decide the eligibility question? Or I guess my question is, do they have to decide at next meeting? Is it man?
Yeah, I want to take a step at that. I think they do have to decide at the next meeting, because they have to start the process of actually figuring out how much reparations are going to cost. And so they have to figure out the question of eligibility to be able to tell the economists, hey, how, you know, do your work and tell us how much this is going to cost. But if the economists don't know who you're talking about, they can't tell you how much it's going to cost. And actually, the economists came on right after that delay vote and said, listen, we really don't know where to start because y'all didn't tell us nothing about no eligibility. So until you tell us about eligibility, we can't tell you how much this is going to cost. We can't even give you an idea how much this is going to cost because you haven't told us who you talking about. And so I think they have to take this vote next meeting. I think they will take the vote the next meeting. They just voted to take the vote the next meeting. And so, yes, there can be an attempt to delay it again, but I think that will fail this time. And I think there will be a vote for lineage next meeting.
Yeah, I just want to hop in and just like everybody else here, that was disappointing to see and to listen to. But I want to shout out, Council Member Montgomery Stepp, Camilla Moore, Dr. Brown, and Jovan Scott Lewis for standing strong on the right position, right? Like I want to recognize them because they understand. If you watch Jovan during that vote, you could see how he was disappointed in that moment as well, right? So I think he shared, the feelings that we're going through, our community is that why are we having this delay? There's been 9 months of testimony. There's been 9 months of public comment. You've had 9 months of time to, wrap your mind around this and to delay, the work of the task force another month, to delay the economists being able to get going, to delay the anchor organizations to be able to, target our community for listening sessions, right? Because we need instructions as well, right? Like we know, but at the same time, we're, assisting the task force. So they slowed down the entire process for another month. But I also want to bring up something that Chris has said multiple times, and I absolutely agree with you. This created an opportunity for us. So if you notice what happened after that vote, it traumatized our community, but it also energized our community. And so now you have more people than ever paying attention, asking questions, and getting engaged, right? You have people watching this, and major news media is covering this because they know the ramifications and how this is going to resonate, this vote in March. So to your point or to your question, I think they're going to take a vote. In fact, I'm 99.9% sure that they're going to have to take a vote. I think that vote's going to go in our favor. And then when that vote goes in our favor, we get back to work. And then we have the basis for what we can work on, right? So, at the end of the day, it was disappointing, but I think it created an incredible opportunity for us. I think it brought an energy to this movement and to our community that was needed to be able to understand that. And again, I got to remind everybody what we're working on. This is reparations for 400 years of oppression, state-sanctioned oppression, right? We were enslaved. We were brutalized. We were murdered. We were lynched. We were drugged behind trucks, and we were, quartered and cannibalized and everything else, right? Every atrocity has been done to us. This was never going to be easy. So don't let one vote at one meeting discourage anybody from thinking this is going to happen, because that just re-galvanized my belief in that this is going to happen, because I never believed that this was going to be easy. And I'll stop.
All right. And if people can see the picture up there, I don't know, Chris or Chad, you guys or anybody else wants to answer this, but specifically, but could we go through so we're specifically clear? Maybe start with Chairman Moore to the upper left to see who voted on what, so we know and the family knows who voted on what specifically for the eligibility.
Yeah, I mean, I can make this pretty simple. Yeah, the Chair Moore and Dr. Brown voted against the delay, as did Monica Montgomery Stepp, and as did Dr. Jovan Scott Lewis. Also, those four, what I'm calling the Fantastic Four, they voted against the delay. So everybody else voted for the delay. So that makes it, fast.
So the one, oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was just gonna say, so everybody knows who to head up on your social media, who to go to their Twitter accounts if they have Instagram accounts, and let them know how you feel about the delay, one, but two, specifically how you feel how this should be attached to lineage, not harm, not race, not anything else, but communicate to them your perspective.
So
Yeah,
yeah,
this picture lays it out nicely. All the defectors are here in the middle, so you can see them right there on the bottom row. Hit them up on social, y'all.
all right.
Now, speaking of some of these calls to action that have been having this week, we've been sending out thank you tweets to all of the task force members that did vote a no vote against the delay. So that's something that you can still do to show your gratitude. What are some other calls to action? You can call your Let's see, Stephen Bradford here, one of the task force members that voted for the delay. Here's all his information if you need to give him a call. Also, Governor Gavin Newsom, some of the people, the task force members that voted for the delay were his own picks. So you want to let him know how disappointed we are in that.
Yeah, shout out to Chris for heading and leading this up, man. You know, you putting in some work, brother, on this. So shout out. Do you want to give the family some other calls to action that might be heading up in the near future?
I'm not going to preview any of that right now because I want to let the team at CJEC take the lead on that. All I will say is that go to CJEC on Twitter right now. Take a look at the calls to action that are out there right now. There's 2 up on our Twitter page right now. It's at CJEC Official on Twitter. It's also on Facebook and also on Instagram too, at CJEC Official. Do those calls to actions that are out right now. So there's 2 that we did this week, this past week. One was to what I'm calling out a Fantastic Four who voted against the delay, reaching out to them. That's Monica Montgomery Stepp, Chair Moore, Vice Chair Brown, and Dr. Lewis, showing them love for voting against the delay and encouraging them to stay where they are, stand strong for the lineage. And then also to reach out to Dr. Weber also to make sure that Dr. Weber knows that we appreciate and support her clear legislative intent for lineage and that we expect the task force to follow her clear legislative intent as well. There's some of the info up on the screen right now. There's also 2 other calls to action that are on my personal Twitter. That's the one for Mr. Bradford and Mr. Jones Sawyer. That's one from Mr. Bradford and Jones Sawyer. That's the one right there that you can see, right? Called Bradford, called Jones Sawyer. And then there's also one to the governor's office also. If you haven't done this yet, and I know a lot of people have done it. So if you have done it, much love, much respect, appreciate you. Much love, much respect. Please continue to, or please do these if you haven't done them already. But also stay tuned because there will be more to do.
Yeah, and Chris is absolutely right on all of that. I would just add to it because I've been getting this question a lot on social media. You do not have to be in California to call on those calls of action. You do not have to be a California resident. If you understand the implications of what's happening with AB 3121 and how this impacts our community wherever we live, I don't care if you live in Timbuktu. You can call up the California Reparations Task Force members. You can call up the governor. You can call up Dr. Shirley Weber, and you can make your opinion be known. So don't think that this is strictly for California Black Americans. This is for all Black Americans who have an interest in reparations and who understand how important what is happening here in California is to the federal effort. So not just California, everybody. It's the whole family, all hands on deck. And you can call more than once too. Don't think you called once and you done, right? You can call as many until your minutes run out on your phone, right? Keep on calling.
Super facts.
All right, I think that's pretty much it. Should we look at Camilla Moore's feedback and response to what she had to say about I guess Dr. Grills or the overall panel or something? I think we have a clip, don't we?
Yeah, let's do it.
That was a surprise to me that this stuff is hard work. It really isn't as hard as people make it out to be. The other point that I wanted to raise is the idea of CARICOM, right? We know that CARICOM is a collection of Caribbean nation states, and they are doing the hard and formidable work of trying to get reparations from their former colonial masters. And as a Black American, I support CARICOM's efforts, but I wouldn't know necessarily at this time I would be eligible for reparations under CARICOM. So let's say I moved to Jamaica or Trinidad tomorrow, or I was there for 2-3 generations. It's still not clear if I would be eligible for reparations there in that country, even if I was, you know, 3rd, 4th generation, you know, Black person who immigrated there.
Facts.
Makes
Right.
perfect sense. I mean, and that's what I told Chris too when I was trying to figure out my lineage. I was like, another way that I know that I'm an American descendant of chattel slavery is because this is home. I ain't got nowhere else to go. I mean, I have friends. They be flying back and forth to the Caribbean, talk about, oh, going home. So nice to visit home. This is home. There is no other home. That's it.
Yeah, I 100% Kim, right? We no escape hatches, right? Nowhere to go. I just want to commend Chair Moore. Camilla Moore has been absolutely amazing on this task force since day one. You know, we advocated to have her in that seat as the chair in the first meeting when they were deciding those roles, right? And I think what is being proven out is that we made the right decision. She is standing strong for our community. She is setting a direction and giving guidance to this task force. If she wasn't in that seat, that voice wouldn't be heard. We would not have that strong advocate there. So I just want to give her flowers while she can still get them, because she deserves them, right? And that's going to be someone that we talk about, you know, long after we're all gone. You're going to know the name Camilla Moore because of what she's doing on this AB 3121 task force. And so thank you, Camilla. If you're watching this, thank you for everything you're doing. I couldn't be more proud of you.
Okay, so if there are any
Honor.
other parting words, but I think we just wait till the 29th, see what happens there, keep this energy for our lineage and move forward.
Yeah, Bet family, before we get out of here, first of all, thanks everybody for tuning in. We really appreciate it. Once again, I'm in the Mass Media Group is working on a documentary called Reparations Now. We really appreciate everybody's support. I think we do have a GoFundMe somewhere. So if you go on GoFundMe and just type in Reparations Now documentary, you can donate to our effort. And also, Chad, what where could people reach you at? And you also have I'm sorry about that. And you also have Politics in Black, right?
Yeah. I mean, you can check out Politics in Black on YouTube, on NAASD LA's YouTube channel. We're doing monthly shows right now because it's just too much work to be doing like any more often, any more frequent shows than that. But you know what we try to do each month is, you know, bring you information that you need and that can empower you in this fight. If you are in this reparations fight, we want to make sure that you are educated, that you're trained, that you're understanding, you know, kind of the conversations that are happening. We've had Chris on, you know, he's brought some great information, and on the local fight, you know, we talk to our organizers and activists around the country. Again, you know, this is a movement of grassroots, which is why this is going to be the successful movement for reparations, because this is a movement that's born out of our community. It's born of us. So it can't help but win for us, right? So on Politics in Blacks, we try to uplift the grassroots. We try to uplift this movement, and we try to make sure we're always bringing good information on what's happening in the real time in this fight to you. So tune into that. We advertise on Twitter. My Twitter is at @Chad_Boogie. And just, you know, stay tuned, man. Keep hanging with us. You know, keeping the fight. Stay on the phone lines. I saw somebody in the chat said that they called and left a voicemail and they're gonna call again. That's the exact energy we need. Like, until they turn off those phones, y'all need to be calling them up until March 29th when we get this vote. So all hands on deck, fam. All hands on deck.
And I think we have some listening sessions too, Chris, right, for the CJEC. When are those again for the listening sessions?
So we haven't publicly announced the dates yet. So I want to wait till the team puts them there out publicly. So I will just say that we have 2 listening sessions that we are happy and amazingly honored to be working on. 2 other listening sessions, 2 additional listening sessions, because let's keep it real. We've held 6 community meetings already for reparations here in California. We just did one in Richmond earlier this week. We did 2 in Oakland last year, 1 in LA, 1 in Sacramento. We did 1 virtual. So we are going on our 6th or 7th community meeting for reparations here in California already, but as part of the California Reparations Task Force anchor organization honor that we got, we are going to be holding 2 listening sessions sponsored and anchored by the California Reparations Task Force. So check us out at CJEC Official on Twitter, at CJEC Official on Twitter. Stay tuned for the specific dates when we publicly announce that we are in the planning process now. But just know that they are coming.
All right. With that, I guess we'll let everybody get on with their Sunday. Happy Sunday, fam. Peace, love, and reparations now.
So if you were to bring the black share of wealth at least to the black share of the population, it would require an additional at least $10 trillion.
But if we were paid those unskilled wages at a 6% interest rate, we would have $6.2 quadrillion that we would be owed today.
Reparations is a game. The story, have black folks come and talk about what kind of hell they live and have people have to listen. Reparations will set us free.